Hello, and welcome back to another episode of And Yet We Believe. We're really excited to be here tonight talking all about change.
Yeah, we've titled this episode Making Change in the Church. This is episode number 34. And excited to talk about this topic. We talk about this a lot.
Yes, we do.
The two of us. And so this is us bringing this discussion out into the open for all of you to hear and participate in. If you're joining us live on Instagram, we'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments as we go. Now, part of the reason why this is such an interesting topic is this is a little bit of a polarizing topic.
Okay.
So for a lot of people, making change in the church is a really important topic, a really popular topic, especially those whose faith is evolving. But it can also make some people nervous.
Yeah, there's a lot of hesitation for people to think about the church changing because that's uncomfortable. It can be uncomfortable to work through and live through change. And so a lot of people are resistant to that. They don't want things to change. They're happy the way things are.
And I think there's also a certain hesitation around trying to make change in the church and seeing that as odds with top-down revelation.
Yeah.
And people say, no, that is not my place to make change in the church. That comes from the prophet. Like there's this assumption that wanting or hoping for or even trying to affect change in the church is somehow being unfaithful.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything unfaithful about hoping for something to change in the church or wishing that something were different. Can you hope for expanded women's roles in the church? I think, yes. We've seen very slightly expanded women's roles in the last number of years. So that's not like a fruitless thing necessarily. Can you hope for a better situation for LGBT folks in the church? Absolutely. Can you hope for 1 hour church? I think you can.
Yeah.
And so some of those are big, heavy things. And other things are like, sure would be nice if we had chocolate chip cookies for the sacrament or whatever. Nothing's going to happen, that sort of thing. I mean, might not advocate for that one.
Yeah.
But, an example that I've shared before is Elder Hubie Brown. And he kind of famously was an advocate for ending the racial restrictions for the temple and the priesthood years before the revelation on priesthood in 1978. And so, was he in the right because that ended up changing? Mm-hmm. Was he in the wrong for advocating for something that, hadn't happened yet in the church? But, most of us aren't a general authority.
Right. Yeah. He was in a special position to be able to advocate for that more publicly and at a higher place.
Yeah. And I think it's going to come back to this question, and we'll revisit this later, but it comes back to what kind of change are you looking for? And so making change in the church is a much bigger topic, depending what it is that you have in mind.
Well, so maybe some of you know, maybe you don't, that I wrote a book with MacArthur Krishna called Change Makers. It's about women. The tagline is Women Who Boldly Built Zion. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to talk about women of all kind of variations of life, some had, one of them was Emma Smith.
Sure.
She had a connection to the prophet.
You could say.
And then primary president, general primary presidents, down to just everyday people. And we wanted to show how these women in their different places in life could make change, both structurally in the church and then culturally as well. And so I don't want anything to be off the table. Yeah. I'm not a general primary president, so I can't make that kind of change. But there are things that I can do. And it was really important to us to point out in the book that many of the organizations and things that are very commonplace in the church right now were because of women specifically, but general members more broadly made a lot of change. So the Relief Society came about because of women, because of just members wanting something for the women. The primary was organized because of problems with kids in a local Utah town. The church being consolidated, the meetings being consolidated onto one day.
Into the block.
Yeah, into the block. That is because of members that had to travel to pick up different people to go to church on different days. And it was so much work for them. The getting stuff translated into other languages was all this is all stuff that was influenced by members taking it to their leaders saying we need change. And we can even look at this week. The new garments dropped for for America. They've been out around the world for a while, but I saw one comment of a man who was like, my wife designed those, and was in comment sections talking about why his wife did this and how, what it meant to her to design these new garments. And then also, I am a friend of a woman who took a very detailed slideshow to the church, to the garment department and Beehive stores or whatever it was called. Clothing, and presented, and this was years ago, she presented tons and tons and tons of information about how garments weren't working for women in different areas in the world. She's the one that recommended period underwear and the slips and, different things. And she's just a member like me. She didn't have a calling. She just had certain experience living in different areas around the world. And so there are so many things that we as members can do that will affect the structure of the church. And it's probably easier for us to focus on the culture of the church and talk about the things that we can do kind of more locally on a lower level. Yeah,
absolutely. So I want to acknowledge again, this is an itchy topic for some people, and maybe with good reason. There's been a couple of talks given to this effect. Elder Corbett gave a talk. Now, he talked about this in General Conference. He also gave a whole talk about this, I believe, to a group of chaplains about activism. And that was the word that he used, was activism, and activism toward the church. And he worded this very strongly. In fact, this talk that he gave to the chaplains is kind of wild to read. It's kind of militaristic in the way it's worded. And he says that activism is a tactic that Satan uses, and it's very dramatic.
Yeah.
We don't get a lot of talks that are like that from a general authority. He says he defines activism as the policy or action of using vigorous campaigning to bring about political or social change, especially in support of or opposition to one side of a controversial issue. And he goes on about all of these problems that activism causes. Now, that's specifically activism in the sense of the church, and I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about in that talk. I was reading it and going, man, he is reacting to something. Something has really, burrowed in, and I'm not exactly sure what that talk was about, but that concept does get referenced in the church of you got to be careful to not be an activist.
Yeah. And it was really hard to hear that talk as somebody who speaks up and tries to be an activist for a lot of different issues and topics. It was really hard. And I don't think that there is a division or a separation of activism and advocacy, which it seemed like he was kind of trying to define those as separate things. The Savior is our advocate. That is a word that we use.
Yes.
Advocacy is not something we should shy away from. But also, there are so many things in our church history, in our U.S. history, that are here because of activists. That is not something that I feel I need to be wary of. I look up to activists.
Right? Yeah, and interestingly, Elder Corbett makes space for that in that same talk. And he talks about, for those of us who live in the United States, we're here because of activism. that was a big part of the founding of the country. And he even says, with respect to the church, he says, to be sure, righteous change is needed in our church.
Yeah.
And so he's not saying that there's not going to be change, and he's not saying that we shouldn't be a part of change. It sounds like he's reacting to maybe individuals who took unsavory approaches in some way to being an activist for whatever issue they cared about. But wanted to acknowledge that side of things. So if that's an itchy topic for you, totally understand. And we're not talking about any sort of, burning down, church office buildings or, any sort of crazy thing along with that.
Well, definitely not any activism that promotes violence. Like, that is not what we're encouraging
at
all.
And I don't know if that's what he's responding to. Like, I can't imagine what that would have been. But that does come up in the church.
There's a quote from Elder Marvin J. Ashton that said, "We must understand the need for change. An unexamined life is not worth living." And I think that can go to the church too. An unexamined church life is not worth living. Like, we should be looking for ways to change always.
Yeah.
That's what I feel.
Yeah. So I was thinking about this and noting when we talk about gifts of the Spirit, we talk about them being given to all members of the church, to all of us. This comes up in D&C 46 and Moroni 10, in 1 Corinthians 12, where it lists, gifts of the Spirit. To some is given this, to some is given that. And it's not saying these are just given to the leaders. These are just given to the prophet and the 12, and that's it. No, this is the body of the church. And some are there's that whole body analogy, right? Yeah. Some are the eyes, and some are the feet, and some are the hands, and some are the
stomach acid.
Yeah. See, you got to have some stomach acid in there. But again, that supports this idea that we all have roles to play, and we can all be part of change in the church.
Yeah. So in the introduction of our book, we shared a story about President Nelson.
Okay.
He had written a talk, and its intended audience was women. And as a man, he was like, okay, I probably should have some women read this. So he called in some of the female leaders of the church and asked them to read the talk and give him feedback. And so they did, and they all were like, oh, it's great. You did a great job, and just kind of like lifted him up and, pat on the back.
Which you would kind of do. Right? It's the prophet. I get it.
And he said, no, I need you to give me feedback. I need you to tell me things that need to change about this talk. Please be specific. And so they came back and they said, okay, maybe this could change and you could reword this and, these parts need to move around, whatever it was. They gave him feedback. And he said to them, and this is in an LDS Living article. So, this is from the church, like a reputable source. Sister Eubank actually was one of them, and she's the one that talks about this a lot.
All right.
And so he took that feedback and he said, I don't understand why this needs to change. I don't feel these sensitivities that you're talking about, but I will make the changes. And so he changed his talk.
That's so cool.
So and again, this is female leaders of the church talking to a prophet. They were in a place to give feedback, and I'm not in that place. I would love to read some talks before they're given in conference and provide feedback. That's not my assignment. But these women were asked for their feedback, and they made change, and the prophet listened to them. And so that is proof to me that our prophet does not know everything, is not aware of all of the issues and all of the sensitivities, as he calls it, and was actually seeking help and inspiration.
He needs to hear from us.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
And so why would a bishop be any different?
Right.
Why would a Relief Society president be any different? Why would anything be different? If our prophet needs that, everybody down the line needs that too.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk then about what does making change look like at the local level. And I think, again, this comes back to like, what kind of change are you trying to make? And that's obviously going to drive the whole conversation. But I think this is, many of us are not in a position to make a change at the general level of the church.
Right.
Most of us are not getting asked by the prophet to give feedback on his talk. I'd like to. I think that would be
It'd be awesome.
fantastic. But we're all involved at the local level. Many of us have callings, or at least we have proximity to the bishop or the stake president or that sort of thing. So what are your first thoughts about making change at the local level?
Well, I want to take it even lower.
Okay.
Smaller, I don't know, our home. That is the first place we have complete stewardship over our home. So for us, for me, that has meant changing the art in my home to be more diverse, because that's the work I do with Meeting House Mosaic.
Yep.
And so that has been really important to me. Bringing in new translations of the Bible, talking to our kids about things, explaining things in a different way. Those are all things that we have control over in our home, and we can make change as we want, as we discuss and come to a conclusion together, whatever that is. So that has been really important to me. I am one, if we go out now, take a step out into the church community, I am one that will talk about things and bring things up and advocate for change in our ward.
So let's take one more level in there too, which is if you're if you have the calling of being a teacher, to a primary class, a Sunday school class, youth, whatever it may be, all those things you talked about doing in the home, you can do in the platform that you've been given. You can use diverse art. You can teach true doctrine. When it comes to the lesson about polygamy, when it comes to the lesson about race in the priesthood, you can use the right sources. You can go to the gospel topics essays. You can teach things in a sensitive way, things that often don't get taught in a sensitive way. I was going
to say, you can actually teach those things.
Sure.
And not hide it and brush it under the rug.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then keep going beyond that.
So I have many experiences and stories in the last 5-6 years of writing emails to stake leaders, to my Relief Society president, to the bishop, trying to advocate for different changes, different education, different programs we could do, firesides we could have. I see a need, and so I'm going to talk about it. And I think one of the really important things to remember is if you are sitting in your ward and you don't see a need for change, that to me is a sign that you need to broaden your who you're listening to.
Oh, interesting.
Look purposely for people that are different than you, whether that is race or gender or economic level or political affiliation, whatever it is. Look for somebody that's different from you and see how they are showing up at church, what struggles they may be facing. Talk to people, read books, listen to podcasts, whatever it is, so that you can understand what changes need to happen. Because if you are happy at church, I guarantee there are other people that are not. And so you need to broaden your education a bit.
I love that.
To bring in other perspectives.
Yeah. Can we share an actual example? And I'm going to try to I'll set this up and I'll try to couch it in a way that we can talk about
details
this.
If we need to.
there was a racially charged incident relative to one or more members of our ward. Okay. I'm just going to leave it at that. And so Anne reached out to first the stake president and said, "Hey, I have all these connections. I do anti-racism work. It would be great to have a fireside to bring some people in to talk about this." And the answer was no from the stake presidency. We'll just leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that.
Because I want to focus on the success here, which was, but then you took it to the bishop.
Yep.
So pick up the story from there.
So actually, next I went to the Stake Relief Society president.
Oh, interesting.
Because I thought she was in our ward, and I thought, I can connect with her and we can talk about this. The answer was no again.
Yep. At the stake level.
Yeah. And so then I went to the bishop and I said, "Listen, this is what's happened. This is who I've talked to. This is why I think this is really important. here's, I gave him, I was wanting a fireside to happen.
Yep.
And so I gave him the information about the people that were going to do the fireside. And he said yes. He saw value in it and wanted to make sure education was happening in the ward.
Right. And so the fireside happened. It was great. And it would not have happened if Anne had not spoken up. If she had not said something and even facilitated the whole thing, said, hey, I know the people, I'll talk to them, I'll get it all set up. Just give me the word, give me the yes, and I'll go do it. And finally got the yes from the bishop. And it was terrific.
Yeah.
It really was great.
And the thing about that is, like, I mean, yes, I talk to people. I don't need credit for that at all.
Sure.
But what is important is that I have a passion of working in anti-racism stuff. I've educated myself. I know things. I have these connections with people that were doing the firesides and all of that. And so I used my ability,
Sure.
something that was important to me, and I locked in on what I could do to help the situation.
Yes.
And so what is, you are going to do something different.
Yes.
You don't have those same connections as I do. I mean, you could do it through me, whatever, but like we all have different abilities and focuses and passions. And so our change is going to be different. We don't have to do, you don't have to do what I do. You don't have to do what he does. It's going to be different for everybody based on what your focus is, what your passion is.
Yeah, so one of our favorites, Richard Rohr, Franciscan father, talks about this, and he talks about it in terms of what is mine to do, or what is ours to do. And I love this phrase so much because it does lean into what are your strengths? How do you do this? Yeah. And it also absolves you of feeling like you have to do it somebody else's way.
Yeah.
And you can look at it and say, oh yeah, that person gave feedback on the prophet's talk. That is not mine to do.
Right.
What's mine to do? Something else. And Richard Rohr talks about prayerfully considering this. And exact quote here, he says, from my place of prayer, I'm able to understand more clearly what is mine to do and have the courage to do it.
That's so wonderful.
Isn't that great?
Yeah. Because do you know what that means to me? He is connecting with God, with heavenly parents, and is in tune with how he can be an instrument in their hands, right? And so, I mean, that is so familiar to us as Latter-day Saints of how can I be an instrument in your hands?
Absolutely.
Right? That concept. And so, I guarantee that our heavenly parents are they want change to happen. They want their children to be taken care of and to be looked after and to be loved. And if there is some group of people or some area that is not getting love, not receiving love, and there needs to be change in that area, through prayer, like Richard says, through prayer, we can hear that from our heavenly parents and trust in that revelation that we receive and then go out and make that change.
Yeah, I love that.
It's so beautiful.
I have another quote on this too. This quote is from Bill Plotkin, who is a depth psychologist. And he says roughly the same thing, but expands on it a little bit more.
Okay.
He says, you need to find what is genuinely yours to offer the world before you can make it a better place. Discovering your unique gift to bring to your community is your greatest opportunity and challenge. The offering of that gift, your true self, is the most you can do to love and serve the world, and it is all the world needs.
That's really great.
So again, that's saying there's something that is uniquely yours to do. There's also things that are uniquely other people's, and you don't need to compare yourself to them. They're going to do their thing. You have your thing that you can uniquely offer to the world.
Yeah. And I want to share a quote from Chieko Okazaki that's kind of similar. So she's talking about the mold that we have in the church where we feel like there's this mold that you have to fit to be a good member of the church. And she's trying to kind of break that down and say there's not a mold that you need to fit in. She says, sometimes we tend not to ask questions about options because we feel that we need to think, believe, and act the same way as everyone else. There are different ways we can react. We can choose to be passive or active, to ask questions or be silent, conform to social pressure, or resist the status quo. I think women need to make more active choices more of the time. And so that kind of builds with what you're saying of, and kind of what I was saying earlier of we need to look around and listen to people that are different than us.
Sure.
You know, we do tend to not want to rattle the boat, shake the boat, rock the boat.
Hey, there we go.
I got there. We tend to not want to mess things up and you know, deal with it. We want to just have it be status quo. Everything's fine. We're all fine.
Well, and we also have this assumption, like Sister Okazaki said, that conformity is righteousness.
Right.
And that by the same token, non-conforming is somehow unrighteous or not right somehow.
Right. And so, yeah, we all have our unique things that we can bring, but we have to be asking the question. We have to be willing to be active and working for change if we're going to bring our unique gifts to make that change.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I want to take one more angle on this for us to talk about, which is when thinking about this, I was realizing that a lot of the change that I wanted to see in the church, now clearly there's some things at the policy level, right? Like that stuff's mostly out of my hands. That's probably not mine to do. But there's a lot of change that I'd love to see in the church that is more like, you know what? We should all love each other. And we should make space for each other. And that's not activism. There's nothing weird about that. That's trying to understand each other. That's trying to become more Christ-like.
Yeah, I was going to say that's doing what Christ taught us.
Right, exactly. And I ended up going to the Book of Mormon for an example on this, and I landed in Alma 24 where the anti-Nephi-Lehi's are burying their swords.
Okay.
And they're saying, we're not going to fight anymore. And it says, now there was not one soul among all the people who had been converted unto the Lord that would take up arms against their brethren. And what jumped out at me in reading this was not a policy. This was not a top-down thing. If I go back to that verse, it just says there wasn't a single one of them that would fight.
Yeah.
They just didn't want to fight. And I kind of love this example of we can just decide to model that behavior that we want to see in everybody else and say, I'm just going to assume that position. I'm just going to try to love everybody. I'm going to try to make space for everybody. Now, what's interesting as a follow-up to that is the Nephites didn't follow suit. They didn't bury their swords too.
Yeah.
But they did make space for the Lamanites, and they even defended the anti-Nephi-Lehi's, and they defended them and supported them in what they were doing. They didn't follow, and if we try to set a good example, other people might not follow, but hopefully they'll make space for us the way the Nephites did.
Yeah, well, and maybe that's the difference of their unique ability. Like they found the anti-Nephi-Lehi's found their unique gift to be able to bury their weapons and not fight in that way, and the Nephites, their unique gift was to protect them.
They were doing what was theirs to do.
Make space. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
that's really great.
That's interesting. I also really love the examples. If we're in Scripture, I love the examples of from Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, where he says over and over, "You've heard it said to do X, Y, Z. But now I say unto you, change it this way."
Right.
And so, like, as we're trying to be more like Christ, we can let go of some things that that were not working for us, and we can change them. We can live this new, I don't want to say higher law in a like I'm better than you sort of thing, but a more spiritual and kind of a more spiritual and kind way. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and we had a call out in the chat here of the children of the anti-Nephi-Lehi's, who end up being the stripling warriors, did take up arms and did go fight. And again, that was theirs to do. And they had a role to play there and felt that was the right thing for them to do. I think that's actually a really good example And so, this is a question that we get asked or we hear people talking about. How can I make change in the church? And it's pretty unsatisfying to give like a it depends, kind of answer. But I think I would reorient that to finding out what is yours to do, and finding out what is ours to do, what things we can uniquely offer, and going and doing those things.
So I have a wonderful quote from Patrick Mason.
Great.
Okay,
Let's do it.
It's a little long, so bear with me. He says, the ongoing restoration means that every generation and every person must rediscover the gospel of Jesus Christ for themselves. The pioneers' restoration was for the pioneers. Your grandparents' restoration was for your grandparents. What does the restoration mean for you today at this moment? What does God need you to do that no other person and no other generation has ever done? Sure, there are plenty of constants across time and space. That's what the first principles and ordinances are. And this is why we always build upon a solid foundation of prophets and apostles, with Christ as the chief cornerstone. But what's the new song that God wants to write and sing with you? The melody you sing will harmonize with those who have gone before, but it will be yours, not theirs. The church you build and participate in will share much in common with the one your grandparents established, but it has to be yours, not theirs. The church has to be alive, has to breathe, has to keep with tradition while remaining alive to the present workings of the Spirit. I love that so much.
That's so
I
good.
love this idea of what is the new song that God wants to write and sing with you.
Yep.
And how it can harmonize. We don't have to drop everything completely.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's necessary, but not always. There's that scripture of there's a time and a season for all things.
Sure, yeah.
But we can take what has been done, what we have, and build off of that and harmonize with it and sing a new song that is meaningful for our generation, for our time in the church. I hope that what our generation builds, and even more so the generation after us, is loving people without condition.
Absolutely.
That would be, if I could change one thing in the church, judgment would go away, and just loving people and accepting people how they are. None of this love the sinner, hate the sin. Don't even bring that into it. Just love.
Yep.
Let's just love. That would be my real big wish for change.
Let's go do it.
I mean, we can do that. We can do that part in our home, in the way that we approach church. We are doing that. We're
trying at least, yeah.
That's what is ours to do right now, I think. And
I really like that.
Other people will have other focuses, and maybe that's important to remember too.
Right.
Other people have other focuses. As long as we're all working toward a good goal, maybe that's all good.
That's part of making space for everybody. If something else is theirs to do, it's making space for them to do that as well.
Yeah. There's just one last quote.
Yeah.
Sister Becky Craven, she was the second counselor in the General Young Women's Presidency. She said, "Enduring to the end means changing to the end."
Ooh, I like that a lot.
I really like that.
The enduring to the end often sounds like kind of just white knuckling it out to the end. And this adds a whole new layer of meaning.
Yeah. Yep.
Love it.
All right. We're so glad that you were here with us. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. And
yeah, we had a great group on Instagram, and thanks to everybody who's listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and YouTube and wherever you are getting your podcasts. We appreciate all of you, and we will see you next time.
Yep. See you later.